Okay, now we're in the creating the enemy part of the documentation. So first thing we got to do is create a new scene, add this rigid body 2D node, rename it mob, and then add these child nodes. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Okay, so let's see here. So we're going to scene, new scene, other node, and we're going to look for rigid body 2D, rigid body 2D. There we go. Let's click on that, then click create. Okay, and we're going to name this mob, so we can just click in here and now name it mob. Okay, and now we are going to add some children to this mob. The first one is called animated sprite 2D. So let's click on this and let's look for animated sprite 2D. There we go. Click on that, click create. We're going to add collision shape 2D. So let's make sure we click on mob, then click on the plus symbol, and we're going to look for collision shape 2D. Let's make sure that's selected and then click create. And now we're going to add the visible on-screen notifier 2D node. And so we go back and click on mob, click on the plus symbol, and let's look for visible on-screen notifier 2D. Click on that, click create. Okay, great. So the next thing we need to do is make sure that we click on 2D. So we're looking at this view here. And while mob is selected, we got to click on the group selected nodes icon. So let's click on that. Okay, so that should look like that. Okay, good. Um, Now the next part of this is that we need to go to the mob's properties over here on the right hand side. And we're going to the gravity scale property. So we got to make sure the inspector tab is selected. And we're going here to the under rigid body 2D, this section. We're going to the gravity scale, and this is going to be set to 0. Okay, 0. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to the collision object 2D section. So right here, this section. And we're going to the collision section, and it says that we're going to unselect over here for the mask property. We're going to unselect this one here. Okay, so we're going to uncheck that. And according to that, the reason why we're doing that is that this is to ensure that the mobs do not collide with each other, so that all the enemies don't collide with each other. So that's why we did that. Okay, now we have to go and set up the animated sprite 2D like we did for the player. So let's go over here to the left hand side and click on animated sprite 2D. And we're going to click over here to the far right hand side under inspector. We're going to the sprite frames and click on empty right here. And we're going to sprite frames. This makes that sprite frames selection, and we got to click on that sprite frames now again so that this section can show up. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add the fly, swim, and walk animations. So let's go ahead and click on here on this default. Let's change that to fly. And we're going to go to the art over here under the file system. And let's look for the enemy flying. And let's just drag this over here. And let's drag this over here as well. Okay, and we're going to do this for, we're going to create a swim and walk animation. So let's click here. Let's name this new animation swim. And let's click on this again. And let's name this new animation walk. All right. So for swim, we're going to bring in enemy swimming and just drag it right over here. Enemy swimming, drag that right over here. Click on walk. Let's drag in enemy walking right over here and enemy walking 2 right over here. Right, great. Um, one of the recommendations is that we change this frames per second to 3. So let's make sure we go to fly, change this to 3. The same for swim and the same for walk. All right. Okay. So now the documentation is telling us that just like the player had to be scaled, that it wants us to also scale these animations. Now it doesn't in the doc. This is where the documentation I feel does lack a little bit for beginners, because it doesn't walk you through that step-by-step process. It assumes that because you've already done this with player, that you should already have picked up on how to do this. So what we're doing is we're going to go over here to the inspector tab for the properties, and we're going to the right here under the node 2D section to transform. If you remember, you may not remember, but you can go back to when we created the player, and you'll see that we had to scale this to 0.75. I'm sorry, for the player I think it was zero point 0.5. Over here it's asking us to scale this to 0.75. So let's do that. Automatically it should change that as well. Okay, so we've changed the scale property to 0.75, and we're going to do the same thing for swim and the same thing for walk. Actually, it looks like we don't have to. The moment we did that, it did that for when we did that for the fly animation, it automatically does that for all the animations. So we're good to go there. Okay. Um, Next steps are we're going to add the uh, the capsule shape 2D for the collision. So we have to go over here to collision shape 2D. Let's click on that. And now we're going to come back over here to the inspector tab under collision shape 2D section right here for the shape property. We're going to click on empty, and we're going to select the capsule shape 2D. So let's click on that. And the documentation is asking that we change the rotation property. So let's go to transform right here under rotation. We're going to change this to 90. Okay. And now we're going to come over here to the actual collision and to the collision shape itself, and we're going to adjust this. Now I'm going to just change the size of this so I can see it a little bit better. Oh, that's a little too much. Let me go backwards a little bit. Okay, I'm using my wheel on the mouse to do this. Okay, okay, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and adjust this. Uh, Let me make sure collision shape 2D is selected. Now let me go ahead and adjust this. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. And that collision shape is now set. Now, the one thing that I've noticed, and the documentation doesn't really go into this, is when we set this up like this, it does this automatically for all our animations, right? That we added for the mob. So if we go back to animated sprite 2D and look at fly, notice that it doesn't look at first glance when I look at this, I want to reshape this so that it's the collision shape is closer to this, but the documentation doesn't say anything about that. So I'm gonna leave this alone for now. Maybe later on we'll figure out how to change this so that it's a little more tight and it's better for gameplay. But for now, I'm gonna leave this alone. So don't worry about adjusting anything here. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So basically, for now, just go ahead and we're pretty much done with the setting up the animation for the mob, the enemy. And according to the documentation, now we are going to add a script. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's go to scene and let's go to save scene. And we're going to just save it as mob.tsn. So let's click on save. All right. And by the way, you'll notice that when I did that, that it now added mob.tscn to the file system. Okay, but now for the mob, we're going to add the some code, some script. So if you remember correctly, to add a script, we got to make sure that mob is selected. And now let's click on the attach a new or existing script to selected node. So let's click on this right here. The attach node script comes up. We're going to leave everything as default. And let's click create. All right. And it says to add the script to the mob where it includes extends rigid body 2D. So it's already there. So that's good to go right there. And the documentation. Here, let me bring this documentation over here so you can see what I'm doing. So basically, I'm gonna, as I did before, I'm gonna just copy this, and I'm going to add that to the to the script. So under function ready, I'm going to replace this existing function ready with what I'm about to copy and paste. So here we go. And there we go. We just added the new script. And it's asking us to add something called function on visible on-screen notifier 2D. So let me add that. And if you give me a second, I just need to check to see where they want me to add this code. Give me just a moment. All right, so the next piece of code is that a function on visible on-screen notifier 2D screen exited. Now, if you look at the documentation, um, um, it will tell you that this last piece this last piece of code is set up so that we can delete the mobs as they leave the screen, but it's going to require that we connect the screen exited signal with the visible on-screen notifier 2D node. Um, and it just kind of assumes, and this is where I said earlier that I don't think the documentation is exactly for beginners because it just assumes that you remember how we did the same thing for the player earlier, and that you're just going to remember how to do that. So it doesn't provide a step by step on how to do that, since it kind of provided that before when it did this for the player. So we'll just go ahead and go through that process again, and I'll remind you how to do that. So let's go ahead and set that up now. Um, so what we have to do is we need to make sure that visible right here on the left hand side, visible on screen notifier 2D is selected. And then we're going to go to the far right hand side to the properties, but we're going to click on the node tab where the signals show up. Let's click on signals, and the specific signal we're looking for is the one called screen underscore exited. So let's go ahead and just type in screen, and here we go, screen underscore exited. So let's click on that, and then we're going to come down here to the bottom and click on connect, and we're going to get this connect a signal to a method window. We're going to leave everything, uh, we're going to leave the defaults and just click on connect. And notice that as soon as I do that, it's going to add that code right here to the bottom. So let's go ahead and click on connect, and there it is right there. Now, the actual code, as you can see, is a little different. The code says that it should look like this right here. So it'll be function on visible on screen notifier 2D screen exited parentheses colon. So I'm just going to go ahead and just delete this to make it match. And we're going to add Q underscore free parentheses. So let's go ahead and do that. Q underscore free, and it's right there. So let's just select that. I have to remove that right there. The other thing you could have done is you could have just very simply just have, just like I did before, just copy and paste. Copy, Control C on my Windows computer, come over here and just paste it in there. And this little signal right here tells me that the signal is connected to this right here. And as far as the documentation goes, it looks like at this point, um, we are done with the mob scene. And so with the player and the enemies ready in the next part, we're going to bring the scene together, and we're going to just make the enemies spawn randomly around the game board and just move forward. All right, so that's going to be the next thing that we're going to do here. So let's go ahead and start on that next. Okay, now we are at the section of the main game scene. So that's this right here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new scene, and we're going to rename it main. And then we're going to add um, all these three nodes, actually these four nodes, and set up their properties over here. So let's go ahead and get started on that, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is click on scene, new scene, click on other node, and I'm just going to add a node. So here we go, node, then click create. Okay, and I'm going to rename this node to main, M-A-I-N. There we go. And we're going to add um, four child nodes to this. Before we do, it looks like we have to click on the instance button, which is this here. So let's click on that little chain link looking icon. And we're going to click on player.tscn. So let's click on that. All right, and now we're going to make sure that main is selected, and let's add the other child nodes. So click on plus, and there's going to be three child nodes of timer. So let's go ahead and click on timer, click create. Let's go back and click on main, click on the add child node again, timer. Let's click create again. And we're going to do it a third time. Oh, let's make sure main is selected. Okay, now plus, and now click create. And we're going to rename these. Let me rename this first one to mob timer. It's going to be uppercase M, lowercase OB, uppercase T, lowercase IMER with no spaces. And we're going to do something similar with the second timer. This one's going to be called score timer. So no spaces, score timer, and start timer. And make sure again that there are no spaces and that you're using the same uppercase and lowercase. Now we're going to add a node called marker 2D. Let's go back and click on main. Let's click on the plus symbol and let's look for marker 2D. There it is. Let's make sure it's selected and then click create. And we're going to rename this one to start position. Okay, and now we do have to change the wait time properties for these first three over here. So let's make sure this first one's clicked, and this one is supposed to be. We're going to go to the far right hand side under the inspector tab, under the timer section. We're going to change the wait time for this one to 0.5. 0.5. For score timer, let's click on score timer. This one's wait time will be 1 second. It's already at 1 second for me, so I'm going to leave that just the way it is. And for start timer, I'm going to click on that, come back over here to the timer property, and this wait time is supposed to be 2 seconds. Okay. And in addition, for start timer, we need to make sure that for the one shot property that's selected. Okay. And for now we're going to come back over here, click on start position. And for start position, we are supposed to, for this one, we're supposed to change the actual start position for it. So we're going to go over here to the inspector tab, and I believe it's under the node 2 section under transform. Let's click on transform right here. We're going to change this position to 240 by 450. Okay, 450. So yeah, so change the x-axis to 240, the y-axis to 450. Okay, so it looks like we're done with setting this part up. The next part is we're going to work on spawning the mobs. So let's go ahead and move to that one. Um, but for right now, I'm going to go to scene and click on save scene. And it's going to automatically want to name it main.tscn. So let's just click on save. We're going to leave that default there. Click on save. All right, and now we can move to the spawning mobs part of the documentation. Okay, now I'm in the spawning mobs section, and over here, the first thing we're gonna do is click on main on the main node to make sure it's selected. Um, and then we're going to add a child node. This one's going to be called path 2D, P-A-T-H 2D. Here we go, path 2D. Click create. And we're going to, it looks like we're going to rename this to mob path. So let's go ahead and click on here. And let's rename that mob path. Again, uppercase M, lowercase b, O, B, uppercase P, A, T, H, no spaces. Okay, so we name that mob path. And when we did this, it should have added some new buttons to our editor. So let's go ahead and click on 2D up here so we can see our editor. And I believe, yes, it added these buttons right here when we added this new child node. Okay, so the next steps are that we are to select the one called add point. Add point. So it looks like we're going to select this one here. Okay, so at this point, the documentation, I had to read this part of the documentation a couple of times because it can be a little confusing. But what it looks like it wants us to do now is we want to make sure that we have the actual game, the editor view. So I click on this 2D right here, and um, you're supposed to basically add these um, these add points to the actual player area, which is this sort of rectangular area right here. Now, in your case, you might not see it, so you might be seeing something that looks more like like this, where you can just kind of barely see your game. So you might have to mess with a little with your viewable area here by kind of like messing with the view here. And that's kind of what I'm doing, as you can see. But this is what I'm supposed to be looking at. And with the add point selected, it also wants me to make sure that the use smart snap is selected and the use grid snap is also selected. So I'm going to make sure that's selected. And I'm going to go ahead and click here in this area first, right where the player is. For my first point, I'm going to click here. And now for my second point, it's a little hard to see, so let me kind of adjust this just so that I can see. You can't really see it really well, but I'm coming over here to this area right here, and I'm going to add the second point right over here, right at the edge. Okay, I'm gonna use my wheel on my mouse so I can zoom in just a little bit here, and I'm going to click right there. Now I'm gonna go to the next point, and it wants us to add them in like a clockwise location. And again, it's kind of hard to see on my screen, but on your screen you should see this sort of playable area, which is kind of outlined by a blue by this blue line. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click right there, and that's going to be my third location. And now I'm going to come over here, and by default I believe the fourth location should have been added. And if you have any concerns, just go ahead and look at the documentation, and it'll tell you here where it says to draw the path in a clockwise order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it says after placing point 4 in the image, click the close curve button, and your curve will complete. So I didn't do that yet, so let me do that now. So I haven't added the fourth point yet, so let me go ahead and add that fourth point now. There we go. And then I'm supposed to um, click the close curve button, which is this button right there, close curve. So let me click on that. And I should be done with setting up my points where the mobs will be created. So as a quick reminder, what I did was I first selected, I made sure mob path was selected. Then I selected add point. I also selected the use smart snap and use grid snap. I'm going to uncheck grid snap at this point so I can see this better. But I had that selected, and then I went and I clicked 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, here's my little playable area right there, that little bluish looking rectangle. Okay. And then once I did that, once I was done with clicking on the fourth point here, I came up here and clicked on the close curve button, which is what I just did. Okay, so hopefully I did everything correct. According to this, our path is defined. I'm going to come back and click on make sure mob path is selected, and I'm going to add a child here. Now with mob path selected, I'm going to add a child to mob path, not to main, but to mob path. So I'm going to click on plus, and it's going to be the path follow 2D node, path follow 2D. There we go. So let me click on that, click create, and we're going to rename this one to mob spawn location. Capital M, lowercase OB, capital S, lowercase PAWN, capital L, lowercase O C A T I O N, mob spawn location. And this node will automatically rotate and follow the path as it moves, so we can use it to select random position and direct along the path. Okay, so according to our documentation, our scene should look like this. And if you look at our scene, yep, here's main, player, mob timer, score timer, start position, mob path, and mob spawn location. Okay. Okay, so um, at this point, we're going to start working on adding our code, a script to main.